Thank you all for being here again, for Sunday's seminar. We're really pleased that we have Shane Wiegand with us today. A lot of you know of him and have seen his work, and he works I didn't know you worked at CCSI.
Yeah, they host us.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And he's done so much with educating people about civil rights, systematic action, redlining, like you name it. He just knows so much about Rochester and housing, and that's one of the big things we're asking him to talk about today, because he's an expert at housing. So he's gonna talk a little bit about what he does, what he is doing, and how he can use our help. And we want to be able to jump into what he's doing and be able to help him some more. And last week we had
Dr. Chunkett Fung and Dr. Scott Hunt for healthcare.
and they talked about healthcare, and then they sent this document to their copies over here for everybody to look at and ways you can help.
Great.
They're right over here, so grab one before you leave. And really excited to have you here. Like super excited. So come on up, and we appreciate what you do and what you're doing in Rochester, Monroe County, and what you're doing for us today. So
Well, it's really nice to be here with you all. I was telling your pastor, I was baptized here, I think in 1989. And my dad taught Sunday school, and then we moved to Webster and joined Third Press, so I'm very sorry. But it's really nice to be back. I have some beautiful memories, especially of Christmas Eve here when I was about 5. But and maybe it's the picture or maybe it's the memory, I don't know, but I love this place. I came back when Nicole Hannah-Jones was here a few years ago and just brought a lot back. So it's special to be here sharing. I'd love to share some of what me and my larger team have been learning, especially as related to the housing crisis that's ongoing in our country and state, and especially right here in Monroe County. And want to leave you with some really concrete strategies and tools that you can be a part of or join in on moving forward, kind of knowing that everyone's got a different place and different skill set that they want to get involved. And there's just some big, easy, like softballs that we can all be a part of helping out with. So I hope to leave you with that, share with you some of the new stuff we're doing. But if you don't know me, I'm Shane Wiegand. I taught 4th grade in Rush Henrietta for 10 years. In my first year of teaching, I had one of my 4th graders ask a question that really changed my life. They asked, Mr. Wiegand, did Martin Luther King Jr. ever come to Rochester? And it just floored me because I had grown up here my whole life and I had never been smart enough to ask such a great question. And so after getting over being mad at that kid for being smarter than me, I was like, figure this out. And another kid was like, well, what about like Ruby Bridges? Did we have were our schools the same? Or how about like hospitals? Because we just learned all about Martin Luther King in the South. And so all these questions came fast and furious. It was one of those magical days where the kids are just in the zone.
Yeah.
They're curious and they're realizing just how much bigger the world is than the 4 walls of the classroom. And I know for me as an adult, it's easy to also, my walls are a little bigger than 4, but to just what's in front of you. And that question opened something for me. And we found this photograph taken by Chuck Price, Rochester's first Black police officer, of Dr. Martin Luther King in the home of our first Black physician, Dr. Charles Lunsford. He integrated the Red Cross. They wouldn't accept Black blood in Rochester. And he sent some light-skinned friends in to pull a prank, as he called it. And after a bunch of white people didn't die for getting that blood, he published a letter to the editor in the paper. And it was a national scandal. Yeah, surprise. And the Red Cross nationally began accepting blood from African Americans. I'm talking mid-1940s.
What year was that?
This is around 44. Is my understanding. And learning stories like that about how racism hurts us all because of our fear or our ignorance, and the ways sometimes through humor, sometimes through incredible courage, sometimes just by showing up and taking a step closer to the person next to us, change is possible. And that's what this incredible group of folks was doing when they gathered in Dr. Lunsford's home to learn from Dr. King, but also to support his work and to get his support for the work they were trying to do with a really phenomenal and significant challenge of redlining in our area. And I know I've been here in the past virtually talking about the local history of redlining and civil rights in Rochester, the answers to some of those students' questions. Since then, though, we've had the chance, see if this will work, And my colleague, oh, there we go. I need to do that. Does that work? Okay, that worked. Oh, no. There we go. My colleague Sid stole my clicker, so I'm using my mouse today, so I'm a lot of sorts. This organization was formed. Keisha, James, and I both left our classrooms in 2021 with some significant grants from ESL, the Community Foundation, CONAR, Farish, United Way, and the Greater Rochester Health Foundation and Board of Realtors. All help support us in hiring about 20 teachers to research and write local history inquiries, from LGBTQ civil rights to the Black freedom struggle to enslavement, to Haudenosaunee resilience and civil rights. And we started offering these resources and professional learning for schools. Now 22 local school districts are using these resources. Last year, I think we had the chance to train almost 9,000 teachers and community members all across the state and our different local history units. Our team now has 5 full-time team members and 1 part-time. And we're doing this work all across this region and all across the state every single day of the week. Last year, we ran about 230 trainings for teachers and community members on helping equip and empower people to own and explore their local history of civil rights through inquiry, equity, and action. So it's very nice that Ted described me as a housing expert. I'm not. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, but I do happen to spend a ton of time around housing. So because of those students' questions, and this is, I'm sorry, such a long intro, but I just want to make sure you understand why it's okay for me to talk a little bit about housing with you all today. Because of those questions, it changed where my wife and I lived. Moved into the Beechwood neighborhood 10 years ago. We got very involved in housing work after learning our own family stories, benefiting from racist policies like redlining. We joined the Beechwood neighborhood. I've served on that board for the last 7 or 8 years, connected communities, as well as Youth Community Land Trust, and have gotten to learn a lot from some really incredible people like Liz McGriff at the Citywide Tenant Union, Melissa Marquez at the Genesee Co-op, Ruhi Maker and Barb Van Kerkhove at Empire Justice Center, Aqua Porter and Rebecca Meyer at RMAPI, and many other folks. I've had the chance to sit in coalition and be a part of active and regular work with all those folks, and want to share just a little bit of some of what I've been learning from them with you all today. And so about a year ago, we realized there was more that could be done around housing and housing education. We're trying to change how people understand our community, that people are not homeless or struggling to find housing or move towards home ownership. A majority of the time of some personal failing, but largely a failing of our systems and our community that's grounded in our history and in some of those larger stories. And a couple years back now, a high school student who's seen speaking here at her town board in Henrietta, Benita Kerala, reached out to me and Keisha and said, I see redlining continuing to happen in my town. They won't allow affordable housing for families, only for seniors. And even then, it's usually not allowed to be affordable. She'd done her senior capstone project on this. And she found our website, learned the story. I don't know if anyone's from like Joe Wilson from Xerox. She read a speech that he gave at the Pittsburgh Town Board advocating for affordable housing in 1968.
Yeah.
And it floored her because it was the same thing she wanted to do today. And the speech looked just like hers. So she reached out to us about this and asked for help. And so we partnered with the lawyers at Empire Justice and the folks at RMAPI and a few others, and helped her and about 20 of her friends feel like equipped to actually meet with the town supervisor, put forward something that might change things, and then give a speech at that town board meeting, just trying to support her. And it worked. And those apartments at Marketplace Mall, the zoning changed because of her and her friends' efforts. And this story really, it sat with us in a way. She presented with Richard Rothstein when he came for Pastoral and Presents a few years back about her advocacy story. And his whole book, Just Action, talks a ton about just, you need to show up at your local town boards and city council meetings. That's what's preventing housing from moving forward today. And so that really inspired me and a whole group of folks. So we partnered with Benita, who you can see here. She's now a sophomore at Colgate, and formed a coalition with Reconnect Rochester, RMAPI, Empire Justice, Climate Solutions, and a few other organizations, and have started putting on workshops about how can you advocate at your local town boards for more housing. We're not telling you what to say. We're not telling you what to advocate for. You know your towns, you know your city. But through the amazing technical assistance and insight from folks like Barb and Ruki and Aqua and others, we're there to be like the educational container. And so I want to share with you a little bit of what we've been doing today and invite you to consider that at Third Presbyterian, that might be something you consider hosting a community event about understanding the housing crisis and how to give a persuasive speech at your town board or city council. There's some significant updates to the city zoning process or ZAP plan that are supposed to be launched this month for Kevin Kelly at the city, but he told us that 2 months ago, so we'll see. I'll see him on Wednesday at our board meeting and follow up for sure. But there's some big things coming, and in our towns with the dramatic shifts that we've seen politically in many of our suburbs, there's real opportunity for people who say, I want more neighbors in my community. I want more options. As a senior, I want to be able to age in place. As someone with adult children, who cannot afford to live in the towns they grew up in, what we do with what's allowed to be built is going to be really important for us to consider. So I'd love to show you a little bit of what we've been learning and doing, and field any of the questions that you have as we go throughout. Does that sound okay with you?
Great.
Okay, perfect. All right. Let me see what else. Oh, and we've been doing these workshops all over Pittsburgh and Henrietta. The real estate board, we're doing it every quarter, actually. It's been amazing to get those guys fired up. They're seeing it. They're going, they're speaking. This was at Asbury a few weeks ago. I know we had a few folks, you all know, Lori Mahoney, right? Of course, I'm sure she's sent several emails trying to get you to go to this. But 60, 70 people are coming out to these, and then they're getting fired up and starting to get organized in their towns to really do this work. Towns like Penfield, Brighton, Fairport, Irondequoit, Webster. We're seeing neighborhood groups get really organized, and of course, right here in the city of Rochester. Let's see if I can slide switch. So the way we do this workshop, which we kind of see as redlining 2.0, many of you have seen the first redlining presentation that we give. This is talking about the continuation, what people did in the 60s to fight redlining after redlining ended, like Joe Wilson and others, what we can learn from their successes and mistakes, if that makes sense. So ultimately, the way it works is we go through 4 or 5 sections that you can pick or choose from over about 2 hours, where essentially we're equipping you with the tools to build your own case, your own letter, or your own speech to your town board or city council, starting with modern or current data, looking a little bit at the past specific to whatever towns are present, looking specifically at ways other states, communities, and even right here, people are addressing it by asking for the right things. We're calling that missing middle housing. Critiquing advocacy speeches and letters. So we give you a bunch of exemplars and terrible speeches and letters for you to determine which is good and which is bad. And you wouldn't believe how many people are like, this is a great speech. And then our team member, Justin Murphy, who wrote the speech as former DNC reporter, is always like, no, that one's bad. And here's why. And people are debating about like, if you show up self-righteous, it's going to be trouble. Oh, someone's trying to get in. Perfect. And then we close with people actually rehearsing and giving a speech. At Asbury last week, 3 or 4 people got up and gave a speech. Because I realized, after Benita gave her speech, I realized I'd almost never, until I was maybe 27, and my friends forced me to go speak at a city council meeting. I've never seen my parents give a speech. I've never known a friend who gave a speech. Like, I'd never even gone to a city council meeting. Like, it's a weird thing to do. Like, in our communities of late, I feel like it's less and less a normal thing. Something for some wild crank who wants to grind an axe to get up and do, instead of some good church-going folk like yourselves to show up and politely share, hey, this could change, and there's lots of different ways to do it. Over the years now, I've gotten to attend a lot of city council and town board meetings, and I've given some terrible and some good speeches. And my first speech ever was on the income requirements, like allowing Section 8. Landlords could discriminate based on your income. And so our MAPI had this proposal of trying to get city council to pass it. I got up, I had no written speech. I could talk. I didn't know what I was saying. It was terrible. Carolee Conklin on city council came up to me after and was like, that was the best, but keep coming back. doesn't have to be that good. She got the message by the end and she agreed. Luckily, I was with other people, but I was a body with words that were in the right direction. And honestly, that's what it takes. We're learning that it's 10 or 15 people in each town that are getting up at every town board or city council meeting and they're preventing housing from getting built. And Beechwood, where I live, as part of Connected Communities in partnership with Home Leasing, we were gonna build hundreds of apartment units called the Beechwood Family Apartments. They were gonna be beautiful, incredibly well done, owned in part by the community organization. And it was 3 neighbors who said, not in my backyard, that's gonna hurt our property values, and these poor people are gonna bring in crime, that killed the first and second drafts, and then ultimately made it cost more, made it so that less was allowed to get built when they finally got built. If more of us had shown up, it could have made a difference. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's happening in all of our towns all the time. So I want to start by just giving you a little sneak peek of how we do this presentation, if you would. I am a teacher, so I'm going to invite you to just join in with me for a very quick second. I want to invite you to just be mildly frustrated while I put some series of images on the screen where I don't tell you what they are until the end, but instead get you talking with your neighbor or the person next to you about what you notice, what you wonder, and what story these images might tell about our community. Sound good?
Yeah.
So here's what I'm gonna do. And again, I promise it will make sense at the end. Don't throw me out of here, okay? So there's no wrong answer. If you're on Zoom, feel free to throw it right in the chat, but I'm gonna put up an image. I want you to just, as soon as you're ready, share with the person next to you. What do you notice? What do you wonder? Or what do you infer? Okay, what do you notice? I purposely left off the key. Tell the person next to you.
I was in
Yeah, there's
Asbury.
very little white.
So.
There's a lot of white, but there's no white.
Again, if you're on Zoom, feel free to share right in the chat.
No, it doesn't. It's right there. It almost looks like, no, it's like the community that is here and the planets for me, it's for me.
So my good.
So, yeah.
And Peter's. White area. But.
All right, what do people think it is? What do you got? I heard income and race.
Yeah.
What else?
Maybe areas that have approved affordable housing.
Where housing or affordable housing is allowed, geographic differences. There's something like this big dark space in like
Yeah.
England, Chile, like what's going on over there, right? Okay, are you ready? I'm gonna give you the key and then I'm gonna give you another mystery image. Okay, so here it is. The purple or light and dark shows where a single housing unit, detached or semi-detached, can be built as a principal use of right. And this has to be at least a 1/4 acre or higher of land.
Huh?
And I will reveal, this dark area, in Wheatland, it means it's farmland. And so it's possible that you could build housing there, but it's more.
Okay.
Or worker housing, but only if you can prove they're your employees living there, so like migrant workers.
Uh-huh.
Okay, here's another one. This is where the rules allow a single housing unit, whether detached or semi-detached, on less than a 1/4 acre of land. So I want you to think about a starter home. When my grandpa moved to Greece in 1950, and the government helped him buy that home through redlining, it was on a teeny plot of land and it was a teeny tiny starter home. But that's what allowed him to invest in his business, sell, buy a bigger home, right? So what do you notice? And again, turn and talk with your neighbor about where smaller or starter homes are allowed to be built in our community today. This is today.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's just.
Not enough area.
Majority of the area. This is city around. It's like around.
Yeah, so where it is. you
Yeah.
know, right. Yeah, probably not another.
Majority no. Oh, there, you know, Penny and. Yeah, something like a sea Penfield.
Yeah.
And it's north.
So you can't build.
So there's a few little spots, right, sticking out to folks.
You'd want to build it.
Here's one more. This is where you could build missing middle housing. That means like a townhouse that has 2 units or up to an apartment that can have 4 units. And this is where you're allowed to do that.
Is it the dark color?
The light purple.
The light purple.
You could do it over in the dark purple, potentially, but that's more industrial. So it's possible that you could do it there, but it's a little bit harder to do.
So it's really Fairport.
Yeah, and that's not totally true either, like, there's some significant notes around it. You can go to zoningatlas.org to learn, but Fairport looks a little bit better than some areas from this map. Student housing in Brockport. I'll show you one more. This is where an ADU can be built, or an accessory dwelling unit, you know, like a granny cabin.
Okay.
Right, so like you convert your garage or basement into an apartment, it helps a lot of seniors age in place. Or families who wanna have, you know, like their parent help with childcare, who's retired and wants to live close, but have their own space.
This is based on existing zoning today.
This is existing zoning code today, and I will say this part in Wheatland, we looked it up. This is only if you can prove they're a family member or your employee, can they live in accessory dwelling unit? And then Penfield, you have to have documented proof they're a family member. In order to have someone living in an accessory dwelling.
Is that what, as of right?
As of right, yeah, like you could do it without special permission.
So you can build it that way, but then what if, you know, your employee, you fire them or your grandmother dies, you know, can you?
Then you
put
can only
somebody else?
use it if it's another employee or another family member.
Oh, forever? Okay.
So it restricts, right? As you start to see, right, the zoning code. It is a huge part of who's allowed to live where, what's allowed to be built, and it makes a difference. So if you think about it, a majority of our community, you're only really allowed to build single family houses on somewhat large lots of land. And the larger presentation will give people a big packet with a bunch of data, I'll highlight a few kind of key points, but we have people go through it and identify maybe one data point they might use in a speech or advocacy, that they're like, this is the one for me that really motivates me. So this is relevant to my family. The median house sales price has increased 97% in the Rochester area in the last 6 years. So look at that, the median house in 2019 was 153,000, and in 2025, it's over 305,000 in Monroe County. So that's like dramatic. Like when my sister just bought a house in Brighton last year, it was a small miracle they got it. It's like 40 other people. It's the 30th house I think they put in an offer for. She's a physical therapist. Her husband works at U of R. My parents and his parents both gave them way too much money for that down payment. And then they had to do like one of those like kind of cash offer things, you know, through like it feels a little sketchy, but somehow it worked. And that was how they were able to get the house, and the realtor somehow knew the other, who knows? Like, I don't even know how they got it. And it's a teeny tiny 3-bedroom home. And they paid well over this for that house, you know? So it's interesting to think about. My house in 10 years in Beechwood has almost doubled in price. Like it's really something to think about. And so if you're not looking to sell, you might not be aware or notice, but how many of you have someone in your life who's been trying to buy a house or looking for a place to live or rent, right? It's tough out there right now. And a lot of us would say, the experts at Empire Justice or MAPI would say, and I find myself agreeing, that it has to do with supply. There's not enough housing supply. And also it has to do with changes, and that as more people have divorced or more people have separated in our communities, right? Or as people get older, we used to have people in the 60s and 70s having a lot of people living together, but the average number of people living together in a home has also dramatically decreased. So the need has risen and risen, which also increases that sales price. If you're a renter and you make less than $75,000 a year, that's too little to buy a house in Monroe County right now. And I want to just give you some context. After 10 years of teaching 4th grade in Henrietta, and it's public information, my salary was $50,000, right? So it's kind of crazy to think that our suburbs and a lot of our city are making a choice that teachers, nurses, the people who work in our stores, unless they have significant generational wealth, there's a real barrier to them ever owning a home or working towards that American dream. Like that door starting to shrink potentially is what some are saying. Or the city has more units with rent under $1,250 than the rest of Monroe County put together. And so you can see that the rent, if you're gonna live, it's really in that crescent of Rochester, of poverty as they call it, or the previously redlined area. Those are the only places you can buy a house for under $150,000 today. And they're the only places where you can rent somewhat affordably. It's not affordable in those places necessarily, especially for Rochester, anymore. And so people are taking note. It's not just social justice-y people like an Empire Justice or RMAPI or Climate Solutions or our team. It's the Chamber of Commerce, it's the Real Estate Board, it's the Builders Association, it's GRE, it's the city and the county. Here, Bob Duffy says the economy going forward is going to be totally dependent on what we do here with housing. He says, I think our elected officials know better than anybody that sometimes we're held hostage by 10 people when the 10,000 want to support something. I think it's because the larger collective voice is not heard. And this is at the Real Estate Board's economic forecast last year on a panel where Duffy and all the other big leaders of Rochester's business community are saying like, what we do with housing is huge. We can't bring people to Rochester or fill the jobs because there's not enough places for people to live. And it's because 10, 15 people, and he's right, are showing up in Parenton like they just did, killing townhouses in the town, or in Pittsford or these other towns, and making it really hard to buy or build something. Or it delays the process by 2 years. And then now the builder, they're not gonna eat that cost. They're gonna put it back into the cost of the housing. So it no longer is it necessarily affordable. What I think is interesting, oh, go ahead.
Those trainings that you talked about doing
Uh-huh.
help improve that collective voice, right?
So if we could get more than 10 people at that town board meeting saying the opposite, we have a chance to start to change the narrative. And that's what we've seen when housing like Benita, that's what inspired me and Henrietta. She and 10 or 15 of her friends from the high school gave speeches. They met one-on-one with a supervisor. They got the inside info for what to say to push the board, what not to say. The speech they gave was a speech that was vetted so that it was gonna be heard and not just their angry feelings, but something that led to change. And it did, with what got built at Marketplace Mall. And so I think this is one of the most concrete things all of us can do. We can't control right now what's happening with the federal government, which is slashing vouchers, Section 8, and so much related to housing. We need the federal government to help us in this, but in this moment, it's a little out of our hands. But as powerless as it's felt right now to try to create change, we all can do something in each of our individual towns. And so if housing or affordability of housing is something you're thinking about or passionate about, or fits in line with your values, showing up at a town board meeting, albeit awkward, and maybe an hour and a half out of your month, you showed up even to 4 or 5 a year with a group of your friends, the facts show that things can change. And what's interesting is Duffy's not saying something new. I'm not saying something new. Our Mappy's not. This literally happened back in 1968, or just like today, because of redlining, there was a huge housing shortage and crisis in the greater Rochester area. Joe Wilson, Lewis Eilers, the CEO of Kodak, they partnered with the city and the county, the real estate board, the builders, the bishop. I mean, it was some of the biggest names across the community forming a housing coalition. They pumped millions of dollars into advertising campaigns and even a documentary that went on all the channels at night, all 4 of them, at prime time, encouraging people to speak at town board meetings to advocate for more types of housing. Market rate apartments and townhomes to affordable, to somewhere in the middle, but saying we need that in every one of our towns to kind of share the balance. And honestly, it worked. They got a ton of things built. Gleason Estates in Pittsburgh, Tryon Estates in Irondequoit, Phillips Village in Webster, the Pines at Parenton and Fairport. But in 1971, Joe Wilson died. And the whole thing died with him. Because he was spearheading it. It was part of his passion after the uprisings of '64. And so that was one big lesson that we learned, right? It can't all be on the shoulders of one person, which is why for us, a lesson we learned from what they did is they said, let's have all the most important people gather and 2 or 3 token minorities, 1 woman, and together we're gonna change this by sheer force of will. I mean, Wilson actually pressured 200 Xerox employees to speak at a Pittsburgh town board meeting, which like, where's our Joe Wilson today? I mean, I love it. And yet there's still a bit of a weakness there, in terms of equipping everyone to understand the problem and realize it's in your power to get up and speak, because the other side has always known that and always has done that quite actively. And so we really leaned into this quote from James Baldwin, who says, history is not the past, it's the present. We carry our history with us and we are our history. And I think the other part we noticed that was missing as we looked at some of this lesson was people like Joe Wilson, they were on the boards of Rochester Savings Bank. Their companies like Xerox didn't hire African Americans until the 60s, same with Kodak. And here they're leading this coalition. Joe Wilson's neighborhood in Brighton, McFarland Farms, he was on the advertisement, his name and his neighbors saying, we have the whites only deeds in our neighborhood, advertising exclusion in the 1940s. And on the board of Rochester Savings Bank, they were hired as the consultants to build Rochester's red line map.
Yeah.
And like, he didn't necessarily do it, but he's connected and a part and a city father. You know what I'm saying? And there was no ownership of weight, maybe I'm part of this. Or same with Kodak or some of these other boards. And I think for us, that's another lesson of like telling the full story of how we got here is also some part of this. And so we really encourage, oh, go ahead.
You know, the previous slide,
Yeah.
who from Kodak was on this committee?
Dr. Louis Eilers, right here. He was the CEO at the time. This was, I think, 1968.
Okay,
And then
so-
we got some Kodak people here that might want to correct. I can share the documentary with you that he's in.
Okay, so William Vaughn must have been the immediate predecessor then, to the CEO.
That sounds right.
Okay,
I know that name.
but he's not there. Oh,
Eilers was the one in the documentary that aired in 68. Eilers is sitting on the top of the Kodak Tower, like at a little table with like the head of the marketing firm, and they're like talking about the housing crisis and how they're gonna fix it. It's really something else.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'd be curious.
There's some great stories about Joe Wilson.
It's amazing.
Going in to meet with the black pastors and all that, and all of that is documented in the book, The Invention of Xerox. And some of the chief engineers
Mhm.
with their oral history of what Joe Wilson did. And ultimately, after inviting the union into manufacturing in Webster,
Mhm.
because all his buddies on the shop floor were getting mistreated by, you know, people coming from auto industry
Yeah.
and other industry. People weren't getting hired because Joe Wilson said, we are not going to survive as a company trying to ascend when we got city burning,
Yeah.
you know, and people can't get jobs.
That was his wake up call.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've read that book. We actually presented to his children and grandchildren as their board. The Wilson Foundation helps fund this project, especially this housing advocacy work is what's allowing us in Empire Justice to do it. And what we love about Wilson's story is you have someone who changed so much. From someone who's aware of what was happening to in 64 calls down, he's like, do we have any black people working here? And they're like, no. And he's like, oh, like, we're gonna change it. And he changed. He went down to Joseph Ave and met with Reverend Florence. To me, he did so much right, and we can still learn from some of the parts that are like, and how much more powerful had he owned his role in some of creating this same
What
problem.
was really cool was that the shop floor chair said, when Wilson asked, how come we're not hiring people?
Mhm,
You said we're going to do it. How come it's not happening?
mhm.
And they said, well, it'll violate the contract. Well, what do you mean it's violating the contract? You gotta have a high school degree. And then they realized that all the people migrating to escape Jim Crow, they were separate but equal, right?
Oh, yeah.
Quote,
Go
unquote.
to high school.
But
yeah.
but you have to go to work when you're very young, especially if you're a black person and you can't participate in Social Security, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you gotta go work, otherwise the family doesn't eat. And so people are migrating to escape Jim Crow, can't get jobs, and they don't, because, and even at Xerox, who wanted to hire them, because the union contract said you gotta have a high school degree. So what did he do? Just knock down, what's the problem? How do we handle, how do we work around it?
Yeah.
He started, he said, here was the offer to the union. Okay, we won't make the contract. We'll pay people 8 hours to work 4 hours on the production floor and then spend 4 hours in the classroom getting their GED in Webster, in manufacturing. It was incredible. This guy was just amazing.
To me, it's just, it's
Irwin,
really willing to try a different approach, devote his resources and time. I've spent hundreds of hours going through his papers at the U of R, as has my colleague Justin Murphy, reading that. I mean, there are thousands of memos back and forth to his leadership team just on this housing crisis. To all the town leaders, he's writing letters, like to find a way around these problems like he did at the shop floor. Some of that's what we need to think about today. There's so much to learn from these different stories. And I think that's part of our hope with this workshop of like, and also to realize it can't just be one person either. Like the amount that man worked, like he didn't make it, he worked too hard. Like it's gotta be shared. We've got to find a way to own some of this together and learn from the genius of the ways he approached.
He also had
some of this.
some significant power in the community, which was really great. So his voice was powered.
He was using it as privilege.
Yeah.
He really was.
Totally, yeah.
And I think that idea of who we were going with, it like in Webster, Phillips Village might not have gotten built without Joe Wilson's advocacy with William Bradley, the supervisor. But it wouldn't have gotten built without the 250 neighbors from churches like this one who lived in Webster, who signed petitions as part of the Human Rights Coalition saying, we want Black neighbors in Webster and we will support you and have your back if you move here. And that made a difference.
Yeah.
And Hagedorn started a bus program to bring groceries back and forth to the village. But like, the town didn't want to build it, but you have a huge group of neighbors who said, Mr. Wilson, we need your help too. Like, let's come at it. And that's to me where change starts to happen, and in a church like this, where we all have power in this room and friends and influence, it is that different leverage. And I looked at all the letters that Wilson wrote, not just to the most important, but to just back and forth to everyday Rochester people saying, hey, show up, or to that realtor, this person, and make a difference. So we want to look at some of those things, and I'll show you in just a second some of Joe Wilson's speeches or letters. But I want to just dial back real quick because I know we're almost out of our time here. We take a look though at how our community was shaped, and this was a new learning for us. You all know about the redlining, right? The areas you were allowed to live if you were of color, or the whites only covenants. So my students and I found on the deeds. But we realized that the whites only deeds, and this is part of the federal housing law from the 30s to the 60s, they were meant to be paired with homogeneous zoning codes or restrictive zoning. And we learned that, of course, like those whites only deeds like this one in Henrietta, over 10,000 in our community, those become illegal by 1968. The covenants become illegal, but the zoning for homogeneity does not become illegal. And in fact, every one of our towns, people came out in the thousands. I mean, take a look at this Pittsburgh Town Board hearing, advocating over bigger lot sizes, making sure there can be no apartments, or allowing more land for golf courses to prevent new housing from being built and to maintain the character of the town. They stopped saying to keep it white, but they started saying maintain the character, right?
Yeah.
Instead of white character, just character.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting. So you're excluding based on class and wealth, but where did that wealth come from? Housing for so many of our families, including my own. And so understanding that part of the story and the advocacy around it, those folks like Joe Wilson and others, you can read their speeches. We do all these handouts and people read, they critique, and then we try to pull out the different lessons. Same with Benita's successful speech and Henrietta and her friends. We have people read them. It's simple, it's easy. The idea is we want people to shift and just see like, I can show up and do this. It's not weird. It's a thing that people do. And if I do it with my friends, it's actually a little bit fun. And then we have the group generate a list. This came from the last one we did, like the power with numbers, have a powerful person with you, be civil and persistent. You got to come back more than once. Part of why Gleason Estates got built was they all showed up, but they didn't keep showing up. And then Gleason Estates became market rate, not affordable housing, because the people didn't keep following up, and the town was able to pull some trickery and with parking the number of parking spots forced up the rents. So, there's little tricks are happening, so you gotta kind of like keep those things in mind. The other thing we talk about, we give people a big array of images of the different options called missing middle. We're not advocating that a 50-story tower go up in anybody's town or neighborhood. Although that's a real thing that a neighborhood might say, you know what, public housing is a huge part of this solution. It works in lots of places. We could look at it. We know, though, that's unlikely right now. So this idea of saying language, like, we're looking for missing middle housing in our town. Or the other phrase, we're finding success at town board meetings with moderate town board members, just saying things like, we want attainable housing. I want my son or daughter to be able to move home and buy a house here. Without me having to sell my house to them, below market rate. Or we want the people who are our teachers, nurses, or seniors to be able to live here. So many seniors are not able to stay in their towns, because there's just not enough housing. It's not allowed to be built based on these codes. And so this is the one that Benita helped get built and Henrietta. But there's options all over our towns. They're still not affordable enough. It's been built. We're not advocating for something that hasn't been done, if that makes sense. Thanks so much, Ted. And also like this is public housing. This is RH owned housing, like, no, not this one, but there's all different options of what it can look like. And that's where our team, our partners at Empire Justice Center, they have this massive, like, 500 slide PowerPoint of every possible option, the actual language that could be in the code. And they're there to help advocacy groups decide what they want to push for and help town boards do it well. So there's all these different options, right? Showing up and saying we want more housing, and in particular, we're good with this, that, and this option, and feeling informed helps the town board be like, okay, we could do that. We already have that in our towns. We could rezone and make it easier for those things to get built. The other thing with the affordable housing crisis that's going on right now is while at the federal level, it's really hard to build new affordable housing. And at the state level, it's really challenging in this moment. The money has run up in many ways. But new market rate townhomes, condos, apartments opens up housing in the city or more affordable housing or starter homes. And it reduces the bottleneck. So that expensive luxury apartment in Harrington, while it's not my ideal or the dream for what I'd want in that town necessarily, I would still go speak at that town board meeting if I lived there for it to be built, because that's gonna open up a family home as the senior or whoever there moves out, and a small family can move into that home, their house opens up, etc. That's one part of that larger solution. And then this other one of public housing, like, these are townhouses. This is RHA subsidized housing in the Southwest. You wouldn't even know. Public housing and the options available that are subsidized have changed dramatically. You could see that in the village of Fairport. It's really possible. It's illegal to build it, though, in a place like that right now because of the laws in those different towns, which could very easily change. We end with those speeches for people to critique and then draft their own. People share out. You can see some different folks and these trainings doing it, having the chance to collaborate with groups. And then we do follow-up workshops with the people who can help you like really get nitty gritty. Some of you are like, I don't want to get nitty gritty. Just tell me where to speak and give me my talking points. That's fine. Like, that's there for you. Do you know what I'm saying? So each of those different options, here are a few of the possible next steps. Of different things that you could do, that people are talking about. The Raise Housing Commission cart that I'm a part of meets every month, fourth Wednesdays. And again, I'll make sure these slides are shared. Ted has them. The Rock Community Table, there's a faith-based housing group that Bob Castle is leading over at Asbury. There's the Yes in God's Backyard movement. We're on church land. You can build housing now. Like, there's really amazing things that are going on, and that folks like yourself, if you're excited about this kind of work, could really get something moving. But to me, the thing we can do right now is you could show up and speak advocating for increased density at a town board meeting. If a 17-year-old high school student, a refugee from Nepal who lived it, experienced it herself, can get 10 or 12 of her friends to go speak, how much more the brilliant people in this room and this larger community to get organized. We've got a 3-year grant with ESL and Wilson Foundation alongside Empire Justice Center to do this work. We're here in the long haul to support people who want to do this, not to tell you what to do, but to be a tool, a resource, and a support for you to decide what you want to see in the city and in our towns. If you're a city resident, the ZAP is coming up, the new zoning plan. There's problems with it, and it's a huge improvement. It's gonna be a struggle potentially to get passed, and it's possible to get more inclusion, like ADUs being allowed in the city. If that happens, that'd be huge. But us showing up to advocate of those things,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. So I'll open it up for questions. I meant to just give you a quick preview of some of what we might offer support with. But this we see as one of the big pieces, not the only, please don't hear more than that, but questions and thoughts.
I just want to say Incarnate Word next door,
Hmm.
there's working on building housing in their yard.
Oh, amazing.
That's good.
I know there's a church in Penfield that's working on the same thing, and a few others, a church, Greece Presbyterian Church, do you know the folks there? They're near St.
Gates.
Presbyterian Gates,
Yeah.
what's the pastor's, we've gone on.
Laura.
She's wonderful, we've spoken there a bunch of times, even helped with like telling the local story, right? They weren't gonna allow those housing to get built. And then the team put together a presentation, they took stuff from ours showing the town did whites only deeds under the town hall, under the schools, like, what are you saying? Like, we can have a little bit more housing in this town, and it worked. They hosted a big forum at the church, you know, they brought in history, they made an economic argument, and they made a moral argument, and they got a lot of people to show up, and I think there's so many cool things, but there's a lot to learn from that church and what they've been doing, so that'd be another cool mix.
Yeah, was it 44? Is it 44 units?
Something like that, yes.
So along those lines of faith-based housing, we hear it in Incarnate Word's got land, but maybe not enough money, and I don't know, maybe we have some money, we don't have the land. It's just an interesting thought about what kind of synergy, not just
So cool.
across the street here, but church communities
Mhm.
in Monroe County can learn from the wonderful people at Gates we are getting to know. Yeah.
They're really doing incredible work. I think teaming up like that, collaboration is so the way to make those things move forward. Like, for example, in Beechwood, with the apartments we got built, partnering with a builder and a nonprofit and Habitat for Humanity, all of us working together has made such a difference in what we've been able to do in that neighborhood. That kind of thing is, I think, huge. Not trying to own it ourselves, but instead, how do we really share it? And that's what we love.
Got a question on the screen.
Yes,
Betty.
Betty.
Yeah, this is sort of two questions. What in Pittsford down by the railroad tracks, is that affordable housing that's going up? And then my other question is the new buildings along Clinton Avenue near the expressway, almost downtown, is that all affordable housing?
I don't want to speak out of turn here. Someone else might know better than me. My understanding in Pittsburgh is that is not affordable. The one that's going up along the canal is gonna be incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be much more expensive because the town made it so hard for it to actually like get approved. So that the builder has had to eat so much more costs. My understanding, the rent projections for those are massive. It's still gonna help the bottleneck by opening up some new housing and allowing a healthier housing market, so I'm not mad about it. But it could have been so much more affordable for the people of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Had that process not gone some of that way.
It's like 3,500.
And then the one on South Clinton, I know a lot of the stuff in the city have, usually like the inner loop, they have small numbers where there's like mixed in affordable housing or senior housing or veteran housing. I don't know the specifics, Betty, for that project, but I can send you the city website links to easily be able to look that stuff up. It's a little annoying to find, but it's all public, so you can find that stuff up here.
Okay, sorry I'm late. We live near that Pittsburgh Railway.
Mhm.
That's the village of Pittsburgh. We live in the town of Pittsburgh.
It's a little different.
And during the debates before the election, our town supervisor, Bill Smith, said that the people of Pittsburgh don't want below market housing, below market value housing. That was his term, euphemistic.
Yeah.
But that was his term, and that was his excuse for the lack of affordable housing. Because we don't want it, which is not,
Bill is very sophisticated in how he talks about it, and
Yeah.
incredibly successful
Yeah.
at staying in office, as he was one of the only
12 years.
supervisors to stay the way that he has. He's come to many of my talks in Pittsburgh, and has like looked at the stories and sticks to his argument. We
Yeah.
want the character of Pittsburgh to be the same. My
Yeah.
favorite quote from him is a 13 Wham article a few years back where he said, you're welcome to come here if you can afford it. Otherwise, our
Is that
parks
right?
are open for you. And he's like, we're gonna keep the character. I mean, he's not hiding that
Oh,
no,
your
he's
not.
class and your class level is the barrier to entry in your town. And I appreciate his honesty. 'Cause I
Yeah.
think in some other places, we say we're open to all, but our laws on our housing are not. And so for him, I appreciate it. I
Yeah,
appreciate people saying, this is what we mean in our town. It helps us understand what's going on, and it gives you something to advocate against or to look at, you know, and Bill said to me point blank, Pittsburgh has no history of racism. There's never been redlining in Pittsburgh. And I dare you to prove to me that there's ever been anything against Black people in this town, you know, and I'm like, here's the deeds.
Yeah.
Hundreds of lumens, and I'm holding that in my hand. He's like, that's just made up. Yeah, like, that's
Yeah.
fine if you don't wanna see it or not, but it's part of the town's story, like every town. I'm not picking on Pittsburgh anyway. And I think that's up for folks that live in those communities to decide, how do we use our history and our stories to challenge that and respectfully bring into the different conversations. And I get the real fears around housing prices going down and the investment that you put into your town. And that's why it matters that folks like Empire Justice, their brilliant legal team and minds, and our Matthew experts, the data is showing. I mean, you could put in a ton in housing in Pittsburgh. Property values are only going up. It's not, too much has been built out that we're not changing things, especially in any east side suburb, if affordable housing or townhomes would be there. I'm not your person to give you the specific stats for each part, but Barb and Ruhi and others could go so in depth around that. And for folks in the town to come together and really make the case and help show it. It's what some of the town board has done, even allowing a little bit of mixed use on Monroe Avenue is great. It's not even close to enough. There's so much possibility, and I see some opening with what Stephanie and Naveen and others have been doing in the town. But we could do more, as can every town in our.
Yeah.
Is there anything, one thing specifically for us in the city to advocate at city council right now?
The ZAP plan that's coming up, the
Yeah.
new zoning update off of the 2034 plan.
Yeah.
To advocate that it gets adopted, but also is more inclusive. We still have not quite seen the final draft that's supposed to come out for a vote, but they keep saying it's coming. But there's a lot of battle going around it, but I think that's one of the big things that when it comes out, a lot of groups are gonna get mobilized around making sure that it's more inclusive and that even to me where it's at is still bad and worth speaking at a city council meeting for it. But you'll hear a bunch and you'll hear it for sure, Patricia.
Thank
I was
Yeah.
gonna say ZAP, and I think ZAP is really critical.
Yeah.
We've been working on building tiny homes for chronically homeless regenerates.
I love
So
Peter.
that, we got to, yeah, so we got, an acre plan, in the city,
Mhm.
it's gonna be rezoned through ZAP in the pocket neighborhood. So that's a high density situation that wouldn't have occurred. We hope that that ends up in the ZAP. We're watching very closely, but
Good.
pay attention to ZAP.
Yes,
Would be
any
my-
of the new stuff that's coming up, and I encouraging people, having people in who are experts on that process. Even if you have a small committee to meet with the Matt Denkers or some of the folks that are real in the weeds about it, or the Reverend Peters and others to then equip and. Get a group of people out to make sure it happens.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna make sure it's there. Yes, Lou.
You had a slide early on that showed some race, I think race-based historical syllabus that was being added to the various grade levels. And I'm wondering, have all of the school districts in the area adopted that or?
All but Brockport has, central schools have allowed us to run workshops and professional learning for teachers. But now almost every other Monroe County town and several across Wayne and Ontario have as well. We've seen a lot. at the same time, while we're busy and we're in a different local school almost every single day of the week, all across our CSD, but all of our suburbs are engaging and using it. A lot of teachers and districts are they're self-censoring because they're worried about what's going on in this moment and some of the specific federal threats. So along that advocacy level at school boards, a lot of people showed up 2020 and 2021. In some towns, several thousand people signed petitions saying, we want the local history of civil rights taught in our communities. We want the local history of LGBTQ civil rights and enslavement. Kids should know it. And they showed up and teachers taught it. And a lot of those teachers still are. A lot of those districts are hiring us to come in and keep supporting and making it happen. And there are a number where instead of 25 teachers teaching it, it's 5 or 6 who are feeling like, no, this is just good teaching. There's nothing controversial. We're looking at primary sources. We're doing it right. But others are like, I don't want my face or address posted in my Facebook or in the news. And there's some small but loud groups like Mom for Liberty that are in many of our towns and are calling a lot of this stuff out and making it kind of scary as a teacher to think about and do it. And so it matters that our community continues to say, we didn't just want this in 2020 after Daniel Prude and George Floyd were killed. We want this over the next 20, 30 years. We should know our stories and give kids the chance to decide what it means for them. And that's explicit when you look at the different work that we're doing. I think, there's the different age ranges. New York State says you're supposed to be doing it. Our work is part of the new graduation requirements to be able to do this kind of work, culturally responsive teaching. We've got support from many of the superintendents like Dan White at Monroe One BOCES and others. And it's still, we need more help. So thanks for that question. And I know we're right about a time, right?
It's important to note that not all of this is in every school, like some are just doing the 4th grade curriculum or something, yeah.
Really important. So when you look at this list, there are some districts where they're just doing enslavement, right? Like, so for example, we've been doing a lot of work with Brighton in the last year, an amazing, amazing district. But we've now had the chance to work with grades 2 and 4, and with 7. But not 11 or 8. And if that's important and you want to see that in your town, encouraging them and saying, hey, we want this learned there is big. So I think that's really important. Some districts like Webster will allow teachers to teach this. They might lightly encourage, but it's not required. Like that's another thing to consider in some places. There's some districts where, yeah, it's just, we're only teaching grade 2, or we're only doing the grade 11 work because they're old enough to learn about redlining at that age, versus we believe across your whole education, learning the local stories more than once at different levels and different developmentally appropriate ways is a really important part of that process. And we're there to support those districts. So really important point that you're bringing up. So we're proud of the reach that we've had, but we don't see this work as in any way done. And we're double downing in every district that's working with us to make sure. And I know we're at time, so I don't want to keep anyone from the service, but there's a lot of questions.
We need another discussion about the whole continuum. I mean, this has been so important, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. That means a lot.
We also need conversation about the immediate need for people who are unhoused.
Yeah.
We are not ready for code blue at all.
Not even close.
We've had 125% increase in unhoused in the last 5 years. I mean, it's just been huge increases, and
We
we're
just closed 80 beds.
yeah, and we don't have any
Devastating.
housing,
That would happen.
not even
Yep.
any emergency housing. We are just not prepared for winter now.
Not at all.
And my concern is I'll be going to speak to council meetings. If you want to know what's going on in the city, you will hear a lot of it just by spending 2 hours a month. Just go to the city council meeting.
Miguel
Speak to
is
council.
very behind, solving homelessness.
Well,
So,
let's hear it.
but I've been talking to him. I guess my message is go to city council. Because they want to hear it, but they are starting to support, the increase in homelessness and the decrease in beds that are available. So.
We do need to focus on people.
Yeah.
People and put
Go to city
housing
council.
first. I mean, housing first is so important. If you don't have housing, you can't stabilize your family.
Oh, yeah.
Kids lose their school district.
We need to be this proactive approach we're talking about, and then there's the immediate need. I mean, the recent Beacon article I saw about how many beds Open Door is gonna have this year.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
Reach Close, it's not even, you're absolutely right, like it's not good, and it's a federal and state issue just as much as local, and how we're gonna pay for it and advocate, like, we're seeing it. It's this winter, I'm scared, I'm really
Yeah.
scared, and I hope that groups like you all, we come together and together we push both proactively 5 years down the line and right now. And I think that's so important. I'd love to talk more about it. That's not my immediate expertise. Folks like Andy Perry at MC Collaborative, Nick Coulter, and so many others. It sounds like you know a ton. Reverend Peters and some of the work he's doing. All of that matters that we really think about. I know you're part of Family Promise, you know, that's one part of that solution. But I don't know. I really appreciate the chance though to share with you today. A great service.